A Kenyan slum turns into an inferno after a fuel pipeline bursts into flames in Nairobi. I'm Lucy Hockings. Welcome to The Hub. At least 120 people have been killed. 100 others are in hospital being treated for severe burns. The other headlines on this edition. The most radical reform of British banking in a generation. But will it prevent another financial crisis like the one 3 years ago? Human Rights Watch accuses the new Afghan local police of committing serious human rights abuses. Murder and kidnap on a paradise isle. British tourist David Tebbutt was shot dead, his wife taken away by bandits. We report from the resort.
It's basically a crime scene at the moment, and they're investigating the murder, but also they're trying to get clues as to where the missing British woman could have been taken.
A leaking fuel pipeline in the Kenyan capital Nairobi has burst into flames, turning a slum into a towering inferno. At least 120 people have died. We do expect that number to rise. The blast went off in the Lunga Lunga industrial area, and then the fire tore down through the pipeline that runs towards the airport. Flames engulfed makeshift homes in the Sinai slum, incinerating the occupants. The pictures we've received from the scene are completely horrific. We saw charred human remains, floating bodies in a nearby river filled with sewage. We can't show you the worst of them, but our World Affairs correspondent Mike Waldridge has compiled this report for us. Kevin Wachiro has been down to the scene. Kevin Wachiro, who has been down to the scene in Nairobi. Time to join Adam now for more of the main news this hour. Adam.
Lucy, thank you. China has officially recognised the Libyan National Transition.
Adam, well worth logging on. Thank you very much. The government in Britain will go ahead with major changes to the banking system that have been recommended by a new report. The reforms include separating the retail and investment services of giants like Barclays and Royal Bank of Scotland. Currently, UK banks can use money invested with them for any part of their interests. But the Commission today advocates separating retail from investment within the banks to reduce risk. And that measure, along with more money being set aside in case of another financial crisis, is estimated to cost the banks somewhere between £4 and £7 billion. That's between about $6.3 and $11 billion. With more, here's our business editor, Robert Peston. This is The Hub with me, Lucy Hockings. Do stay with us. Coming up, murder and kidnap on a paradise isle. British tourist David Tebbutt was shot dead and his wife taken away by bandits. This is The Hub with me, Lucy Hockings. Our top stories. More than 100 people have been killed. Many more have suffered horrific injuries after a fuel leak caused a huge fire in a densely populated slum in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Britain's banks face their biggest shake-up for a generation in an attempt to fend off future financial meltdowns. Let's stay with that story. Justin Urquhart-Stewart is director and co-founder of Seven Investment Management here in London, and he told me just how big a deal this banking reform package actually is. The European Union's ongoing debt crisis on our website. You'll find all the explanation you'll need to understand the many complex issues involved. Discover, for instance, what Eurobonds are, how they might hold the key to solving the economic crisis. It's all there for you on the website, bbc.com/news. The Kenyan army has now joined the search for a British woman who was kidnapped after her husband was shot dead at a luxury resort. David Tebbutt and his wife Judith had just arrived at the Kiweyu Safari Village north of Lamu Island, close to Kenya's border there with Somalia. From there, our correspondent Will Ross. Militias and some units of the Afghan local police are committing serious human rights abuses. That's according to a report out today by Human Rights Watch. The report urged the Afghan government and the US to sever ties with irregular armed groups and to properly train and vet security forces. It comes almost a week after the NATO-led mission in Afghanistan halted the transfer of detainees to several Afghan jails following allegations of torture. Well, Rachel Reid is the author of that report. She told me more about her investigation. Human Rights Watch there. Well, you have a view on that story or any of the others we've been covering on The Hub, the changes, the reforms to the British banking system, for instance. We would love to hear from you. We've got our own Facebook page, BBC World News Facebook page. We're updating it all the the time. There are links there for you as well to the website where, of course, we're covering in depth all of the latest international stories. You can also follow me on Twitter, Lucy Hockings, BBC. I'm doing updates there for you as well. A quick reminder, though, of our top story this hour. We are now hearing at least 120 Kenyans have been killed when this fire ripped through a slum in Nairobi. It started on a fuel pipeline there. Horrible pictures coming out of Nairobi, flames engulfing makeshift homes, incinerating the occupants. Our correspondent in Nairobi, Kevin Wachiro, told us that he saw bodies that were still holding utensils. But that's it from us here on The Hub. Thanks very much for joining us.